What is going on? You're listening to episode 198 of the Nintendo Powercast. I'm your host, N64 Josh. On this very, very special episode, I'm going to be interviewing Ash Paulsen from GameXplain. What's going on, man?
I'm doing just fine. How are you? Thanks for inviting me on your show.
Yeah, dude. Thank you for taking the time. Really excited to do this. It's going to be a blast. So, before we get started, guys, that music you just heard is from On Being Human. You can check them out on Spotify and YouTube. Remember, this is an unofficial Nintendo podcast. And if you would like to get yourself a free book from Audible, go to audibletrial.com/NPC. Pick up something awesome like Blood, Sweat, and Pixels. The chair I'm sitting in from OP Seat. Go to n64josh.com/OP Seat. Automatically save $10 at checkout. And if you'd like to pick up my book, Another Castle, go to n64josh.com/Another Castle. And with that, we're going to just jump right into the interview.
Hey!
All right.
Listen!
All right, so let's see. Ash, what's your history with Nintendo, man?
Well, I have been playing games since I was about 4 or 5 years old. I started with the original NES. And my parents got me an NES for Christmas that year, I believe. And my first game was Super Mario Brothers Duck Hunt, the combination cartridge.
What color zapper?
Red.
It's okay. It's all right.
I had a red zapper. But I think like a lot of people from my generation who are gaming enthusiasts, I did start with the Mario and Duck Hunt combination cartridge. And ever since then, my mom played Mario with me, and then she very quickly realized that this was like a big thing for me, way more than for her. And I think for me that what really kickstarted my love of video games was playing Mario, and like my mom and I would struggle to get to the end of World 1-4, and then we finally got to 1-4. And we beat the dragon, which of course I didn't know that was Bowser at that point.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, well, we won the game. That's it. Okay, I guess I'm done with Mario. And then I see World 2-1, and my 5-year-old mind was just like, oh man, this is a thing. I gotta settle in. And so that's how I started gaming, and the rest is history.
It was so different. Similar story for me. Like 86, 87, got that same setup. But I was used to playing Atari, where it was like you just kind of had one level and a high score.
Totally.
That was pretty much it. So that same kind of thing where it was like, oh, this is gonna keep going. This is going to keep going. I got to make sure my mom doesn't shut this off if I leave it on overnight.
Exactly. I remember I used to leave like the NES on for days just to try to beat Adventure Island, because that game was so hard and so difficult.
Yeah.
Sorry, so hard and so lengthy. And it was just, you had to leave it on for days.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So what would you say, we're going to we've got notes. We're going to, we'll hit on stuff, but we're just going to kind of chat here. So keeping going with the NES, what were some of the favorites?
Well, of course, some of the obvious ones like Super Mario Brothers 3 and actually 2. I think Mario 2 is incredibly underrated.
I like you, man. I like you.
Yeah, no, I love how a Mario game that wasn't originally a Mario game birthed some of my favorite elements of modern Mario. Like Shy Guys to this day are my favorite Mario enemy by far. It's not even close. And those came from a game that wasn't even a Mario game. So
right.
I love that. I'm also a huge, and anyone who follows GameXplain knows this, I'm a huge Mega Man fan. So I think the first Mega Man game I ever owned was Mega Man 3. I think I might have gotten it from my grandma one birthday or something. And I was just enamored with it. And of course, I was too young at the time to beat Shadow Man. I always got stonewalled by Shadow Man. But it just kickstarted a lifelong adoration of Mega Man and his various successors, permutations. I love the entire franchise. So there's that. I played a ton of Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game. I played that. I don't even know how many times I played through that, because I love the 2 exclusive levels you got, apart from the arcade version.
Yes.
Yeah, and man, those are some of the big ones. I'm trying to think. Kirby's Adventure, of course. I'm a huge Kirby fan. He's like my favorite Nintendo character, and that is definitely what started that for me. And so quite a few, a lot of the mainstays. But I played such a wide range of games back then. I'm trying to think of some of the more obscure ones. I know I played one of Square's first games, King's Quest. Quite a bit, and it wasn't a very good game, but I got really into it for some reason.
Hey, there you go. So Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game, that was the first time I played video games all night and saw the sunrise.
That's awesome. Did you spend the whole night trying to beat it, or were you just playing it through over and over again?
Playing it through over and over again. It was like, so I didn't own it. My buddy did, and I was like, I loved Ninja Turtles. Like, loved. I still have I probably have 50 action figures in a box in my garage. Most of their weapons, things like that, and so it was like he crashed. He couldn't hang. And I'm like, I just would beat it with Raphael, would beat it with Leonardo, would beat it like just over and over and over again. Like, really, really enjoyed it. So, yeah, that's I feel like we're cut from the same cloth here, man. Like,
well, actually, I have a bit of trivia that you might get a kick out of, and some of your viewers might already know this, but my dad actually, he and I are both really in the entertainment industries, and my dad actually is a really big voice actor. He's a cartoon voice actor. His name's Rob Paulsen, and he was the voice of Raphael from the original cartoon.
No
from
way.
The 80s cartoon. And he was actually also Donatello in not the most recent Nickelodeon cartoon, but the really good one. It was like kind of CD, and it was the Nickelodeon cartoon before the current one.
Oh wow, man, that's amazing.
So he does various voices, and we promote each other. I work in games, he works in cartoons, but yeah, those were two of his biggest legacy roles, especially Raphael. And so as another dyed in the green turtle geek like me, yeah, no, I figured to get a kick out of that.
Dude, that's so cool. Now I'm gonna have to go look up some old episodes and check it out, because yeah, it's who was your favorite turtle? Did it have to be Raphael because it was your dad, or
it used to be Raphael because of my dad, but it actually ended up, I had to be honest with myself as I got a little older. I'm like, okay, I love Raphael because he's my dad, and he's easily my second favorite. But Donatello.
Okay.
I love Donnie. I'm a sucker for like staff weapons, so like I really like Killick in Soul Calibur because he wields a staff, and
sure.
I don't know, I just think it's really cool, and I also love my dad's version of Donatello in one of the newer series, and I know he's got a staff. He's a nerd. I feel like he's the one that most people look over, because you got Leo, he's the leader. Then you got Mikey, who's the party dude. And then Raphael, who's just kind of a jerk, which is, that's its own thing, which is really cool. But Donatello, people kind of pass over him and kind of downplay him, I think.
So I think so for me, I always bounce back and forth between Raphael and Leo as my favorite. But so to be able to play with the Turtles toys as a kid, I had to basically convince my grandma that, yeah, it was okay. She bought it for me. And then I immediately opened it so I couldn't return it. And then got home, my mom's like, you're not supposed to have, those are violent, and then she was like, and then she mellowed out and it was fine. And then they, it was all good. But so for me, I would rate the Turtles like Leo, Raph, Donnie, Mikey. Mikey was always my least favorite because I thought he was obnoxious as a kid. But
yeah.
But Donnie was always higher on that list for me because of the first Turtles game on the NES, and you could use his staff to cheat.
He always has that range. It's so I know for the first boss you're fighting I think it's Bebop, the first major boss, and you can just kneel on that wall and just use the down attack and just hit him. It's so good.
So
yeah, I love that.
That's what kept him up on the list for me, was that being able to get through some of those stages, because man, that game was no joke.
Well, I will say that I love the rivalry between Leo and Raph, and Leo and Raph fans. Like, there was the fourth Ninja Turtles movie just called TMNT, which wasn't very good mostly, but it did have that subplot about the family being broken, and it all culminates in that rooftop fight where it's raining between Raph and Leo, and it's just, the turtle geek in me was like, this is the coolest thing.
Love it. So let's keep moving right along here. What, I'm assuming you ended up with the Super Nintendo at some point?
Yes, I did. And I've owned every Nintendo console and other consoles as well. I'm a big PlayStation fan as well. I would say I'm like 85% as much a PlayStation fan as I am Nintendo. Okay. But I've owned every PlayStation, every Nintendo console, except for the Virtual Boy. I never owned a Virtual Boy. I'm okay with that. I even when I think about the Virtual Boy these days, my eyes start burning. So,
right. Yeah. You get a migraine thinking about it.
Yeah. So I'm okay with that. But yeah, I've had pretty much every Nintendo console since.
Okay, cool. What were some standout titles on the SNES for you?
Oh man, well the Super NES, I got to say, is probably still my favorite console of all time. And okay. I mean, I could go on forever. Of course, Super Mario World, obviously Pilot Wings, Ninja Turtles 4, Final Fantasy 6, Final Fantasy 4, Chrono Trigger, which is actually my favorite game of all time. Chrono Trigger is just majestic. God, I Mega Man X, all the Mega Man X games, Mega Man 7, Mario Paint, Super Castlevania 4. I mean, I could go on forever. The Super Nintendo was absolutely incredible, and it's still to this day. The Donkey Kong Country games. I mean, there were so many amazing games back then. I would say like the 16 and 32-bit eras of gaming kind of combined are like my favorite space in gaming years.
I get it, man. I totally get it. Like,
yeah,
it's one of those things that like it's in a way it's a little bit hard to put my finger on exactly, but I think part of it is just there was so much hype for games back then, but it was so limited to like magazines or maybe a TV commercial, or
totally.
We couldn't just go and watch a trailer over and over again unless, and in my case, like we didn't have a VCR until like I think sometime in the 90s, so I couldn't even record anything or anything like that. It was just hey, whatever I could see on the while watching cartoons, it was like, oh, there's a Mario commercial, or oh, there's Mario cereal, Mom, I have to have this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like,
no, I mean, you get that one time a month window into this gaming, what upcoming games and games from Japan, and it was different back then because literally the only access you had, unless you were games media, was these monthly magazines. And that's actually what kickstarted my love when I wanted to go into being a game journalist when I was a kid, because I wanted to be the next Dan Shu or the next Shane Bettenhausen, one of those EGM writers. I wanted to be them. And then, of course, by the time I was old enough to go to college and actually do it, everything had moved to the internet and video, and it wasn't quite the same. But yeah, I mean, I lived for those days where I would come home from school or summer camp, open the mailbox and see a shiny new issue of EGM or Nintendo Power or whatever.
Right. Well, and the thing is now too, like we got to experience that jump from 8-bit to 16-bit was like, I can still remember all throughout my history with gaming, I've always heard somebody come into a room while I'm playing like a sports game, and they're like, "This looks so real," or you know what I'm saying? And it's like they would say that on the Super Nintendo, and you're like, "It does not. It doesn't look real." You know what I mean?
Oh, and totally. And I mean, I'm totally going to age myself by saying this, but I think because you and I grew up in that context, and we have that context, that base of retro gaming, living it. When people complain about graphics today, I just have to laugh, because I'm like, even the worst looking games today are mind blowing to me.
Right.
And that never, I mean, that was true of the PS2 era. It was true of the PS3 era. Now you get games like Horizon Zero Dawn on PS4, and you'll get people, pointing out things like, I don't know, like really narrow frame drops or ambient occlusion, whatever. And I'm like, are you crazy? These games look incredible. Like, why are you even complaining?
Yeah, we used to have to use our imagination to figure out what these characters look like.
Exactly. I actually, that reminds me, I think it was either Gaff, maybe it reappeared on Resetera, but there's a picture going around probably for years. It's not going around now, but it taught me that I was always looking at Aghanim from A Link to the Past wrong. What I thought were his eyes, or what I thought was his crown were actually his eyes, and I thought he had like a big pink nose in the middle of his face. And if you look at the picture, you'll know what I'm talking about. But yeah, some of those early pixel characters, you had to really interpret them yourselves.
Yeah, man, it's such a different time, and it's part of me wishes that there was a way to go back to that. It's never going to happen, but like just so that other people could experience it, because there was just so much more magic to this stuff, and they didn't have to try to do so much to bring that magic. It was like
totally
the game itself was enough. The tiny bit of marketing was enough. Right now, it's like you see, you're gonna see. I mean, we saw like, especially when that new Star Wars, or when Episode 7 came out, you saw like BB-8 on orange. Like on packs of oranges, and it was just like the marketing was everywhere,
No, and I think, I mean, I love modern games. I'm not one of those like, oh, the good old days are so much better. Like, no, there are plenty of amazing games today, but I really love that developers back then had to get creative with the technical limitations they had to work around. Like, for example, I'm a huge video game music fan. I'm obsessed with video game music, and I love a lot of the stuff today. But when you go back and listen to old Final Fantasy soundtracks or whatever, or NES soundtrack, Mega Man soundtracks, and you get a feel for the technical limitations these composers had to work around and still get the feelings across in their music. It's brilliant to me. Like the Mega Man 2 Wily Castle theme, that was 8-bit audio hardware, and yet you it's still one of the most celebrated gaming songs of all time because it brings that sense of desperation and slight sadness in Mega Man's, whole situation. It comes through, and it's like, this is old video game hardware. I love stuff like that.
Yeah, I'll never forget the first time I heard, I believe it was Mega Man 7, the bass line that runs through. Like,
yes.
I was just like, this is so good. And the other thing with that too is the music had to be good enough that it wouldn't get annoying, right? Because you're listening to the same thing over and over and over again. And so there's definitely some magic that took place.
Absolutely. No, that's an art form, right? Writing music that loops and people are okay with the fact that it loops and it's still fun to listen to. That's an art form for sure.
So let's jump ahead again. N64.
Okay.
Any particular favorites on there?
Oh, I mean, of course. I will say that it's probably among my least favorite Nintendo consoles just for that controller. I mean, I'd still love it, of course. Like Banjo-Kazooie is one of my favorite games of all time. And fingers crossed that we get Banjo and Smash. Please, 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 please let it happen. But yeah, Banjo-Kazooie, of course, Super Mario 64, Pilot Wing 64, Mischief Makers. GoldenEye.
Oh yes.
I will say Perfect Dark, but I actually was always more of a GoldenEye fan.
Okay.
I'm one of those keep it to GoldenEye type guys.
Interesting.
I will say it's funny. I still remember playing Quest 64, and it's not a good game by any means, but I didn't hate it as much as some people seem to. Like Quest 64 is like the worst thing ever back then, and I don't know. I didn't think it was that bad, but maybe it holds up in my memories more than it does in real life.
I got you.
Cruisin USA, which was funny too because I played Cruisin USA all the time, and I was recently at a party where they had it and they had the N64 hooked up, and I was like, oh man, I'm gonna go play it, relive some memories. And that game runs at like 15 frames per second. I don't know how I was okay with it back then, but it's so choppy, and I'm like, my eyes were hurting. But I was like, I was younger, I didn't know any better. So, but yeah, I mean,
frames.
I would say probably if push came to shove, I'd have to say Banjo-Kazooie is like probably my favorite N64 game.
I got you.
Yeah.
I hate to admit it. I didn't even really play either of the Banjo games until they came out on Rare Replay.
Well, that's actually okay though, because the Xbox Live Arcade ports of those games are actually way better. So you actually ended up playing the best versions of those games. So I'd say you actually lucked out in the end.
Okay. Well, that's good. Yeah, I just didn't play that that time period. It was multiplayer for me. It was it was GoldenEye. It was Perfect Dark. It was Turok. It was the wrestling games that were on there.
Smash. I mean, it was Smash 64. My God.
Yep. It was Smash. It was. I mean, so much Mario Kart, Diddy Kong Racing. Even. I mean, it was just.
Oh, Diddy Kong Racing's brilliant.
Yeah.
Love that game.
Wave Race 1080 so that. What's funny, I go by N64 Josh, and a lot of people know this that listen to the show for a while. Basically, I was trying to come up with branding, and my wife and I are both we were dating when the 64 had come out, and so it's a system that we still go back and play and have a great time with because it's just kind of part of us,
Sure.
And so N64 Josh, N64 Jen, that's like, I'm like, okay, let's just do it, you know what I mean? And so that's where it all came from. But I was doing a lot of gaming with her, and
nice.
That's why I think other than like a couple Star Wars, like the two Star Wars, or not, there was more than two, but like Rogue Squadron and Shadows of the Empire were like the main single player games I played, and then everything else was pretty much multiplayer.
Shadows of the Empire used to scare me as a kid because those low poly models that were trying to kind of get across the idea of certain monsters, they looked so much scarier than they needed to.
Right.
And I think in one of the later stages you have a Sarlacc pit, and that scared me to death. And there are a lot of things in Shadows of the Empire that really creep me out. And I was actually just thinking about how I used to play a ton of Bomberman 64. I loved that game.
Got it. Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, I mean, did you ever end up playing any of the wrestling games like WCW versus NWO or?
I did with a friend of mine at the time, but I straight up across the board, I've never been much of a sports guy. I don't play a lot of sports games. I think one of my favorite sports games ever is NHL 93 for the Sega Genesis.
Okay.
Like that's how few sports games I play. And wrestling, I was kind of into it as a kid, but I never not enough to follow it or play games based on it.
I understand. Yeah. See, I was never really into watching it as far as just like on TV or whatever, but those games were just so good. Like,
Oh, totally.
we couldn't not play them. We were hooked. So
Yeah, I was more in the Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, Smash thing as far as competitive multiplayer games.
Yeah, love it. Great. I mean, were you super bummed out on the Super Nintendo when there was no blood in Mortal Kombat?
I was, and I remember spending a lot of time on Prodigy and other like Internet 1.0 services looking for like Game Genie codes that would turn the sweat into blood, and and finding, coming with varying degrees of success. But I was also very lucky, very privileged, and had a Sega Genesis as well, so I was able to get the Genesis version, put in ABACABB, and get the proper gory experience.
The neighbor that I would stay the night at his house all the time, he had the Genesis, and I can remember it vividly, like the first time I pulled off Sub-Zero pulling somebody's head off. It was just like, this is the best thing ever.
Oh, totally. And it also, and really Nintendo ended up winning out in the end, because the SNES versions of Mortal Kombat 2 and 3 were fantastic.
Yes, they were. Yeah,
really good stuff.
Absolutely. So, okay, and then GameCube.
GameCube is still to this day one of my favorite Nintendo consoles. Probably is my second favorite after the SNES, to be honest. And I mean, games like Metroid Prime. Good God, Metroid Prime is amazing. And of course, Super Metroid back on the SNES. I didn't mention that, but yeah, Metroid Prime. Opinions vary on Super Mario Sunshine. I liked it. I know a lot of people didn't, but I liked it. It had its problems, but I enjoyed it. Mm-hmm. The Wave Race Blue Storm, and that actually hurts. Like Wave Race Blue Storm and 1080 Avalanche, because Wave Race especially, I miss so dearly.
Yep.
And I want that series to come back with, in the high definition era. The water effects were already amazing in SD. I want to see them in HD. So yeah, I played a lot of Wave Race. I think I got into, I played quite a bit of Mario Golf on the N64 with my dad, and I think I played quite a bit of Toadstool Tour as well. That was like one of the only sports games that I would like, my dad was into, because he loved golf.
It was an amazing game.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And of course, I got to mention Smash Brothers Melee, which I at the time, it was groundbreaking. I played it all the time, stayed up all night with friends playing it. My opinion of it has considerably lessened over the years, just because of the community and how it's like, that whole thing, Melee at Evo, and every game sucks except for Melee, screw all the other Smash games. That's driven me crazy over the years.
I got you.
But back at the time it came out, incredible game. And I still respect it for how the leap forward in Smash that it represented.
Absolutely. Yeah. Did you get to play Rogue Leader?
I did. Yeah, that was actually one of my launch games, and it was as a casual Star Wars fan, I enjoyed the game. I wasn't like blown away as like oh my god, Star Wars, but I was blown away by the quality of the music. Mm-hmm. You had like live orchestrated music sampled for the game, and that was fantastic. You got to do the trench run, which I think was a very good approximation of that scene. Absolutely. And speaking of launch games, Super Monkey Ball. I was a huge Monkey Ball fan. I think I still would be if another one were to come out for the Switch. Like, can you imagine that with the Switch's gyroscope?
Let's do it.
On handheld mode? That'd be perfect.
Yeah, bring it.
It sells itself.
Exactly.
Like, why hasn't Sega done that yet?
That's a good question. Yeah. We should get a...
I know.
Change.org. Let's get a petition going.
Yeah, right. I will say, it's funny now thinking of Sega, because that was back when Sega went third party. So the fact that you saw Sonic Heroes on GameCube and PS2 and Xbox was that back then, that was a novelty. It's like, oh man, the first ever Sonic game on, a Nintendo console. And it wasn't the best game, but I had a good time with it.
The thing I'm going to backtrack just a little bit. Like we were talking Wave Race and stuff. I'm with you. I would love. Do you think that can even work today when they just bring out a jet ski game that has no main character? Like, I don't know that it flies anymore.
Well, you're not a big Ryota Hayami fan. I think that was his name. There's also the
Sarah Hill was in Excitebike 64.
Nice. And then there was some girl in 1080, like Akari, somebody, I don't remember. But no, I hear you, and it's hard because I agree. And if they can't justify a new F-Zero, which high speed racing should be, everyone should be into that. Mm-hmm. They can't sell that in the HD era. I don't know if they can sell jet ski racing. I want it to happen so badly, but we seem to be in this weird lull in the industry right now where arcade racers are just not in vogue, like Wave Race, 1080, and I dearly, dearly miss Ridge Racer, and I would give anything for a new Ridge Racer game. And just in general, arcade racers seem to be really out of style right now, and I miss them.
To me, what I would love to see Nintendo do is pass those IPs off to some smaller indie devs and let them go to work on
Me too.
something like Wave Race 10, or the alternative could possibly be you get a mix of Excite Bike, Wave Race, and 1080 as like an extreme sports game. You know what I'm saying? Do
that could be cool.
Like, kind of get all
And
three of them in the mix. So
what we've seen recently with Cadence of Hyrule is Nintendo farmed out to an indie dev, and good for them. That's fantastic. And imagine Sheenan doing an F-Zero game. Like, they could kill that. Like,
Right.
look at Fast RMX. They could kill the F-Zero aesthetic, but
absolutely.
Nintendo, I guess, just isn't interested right now.
Well, and it would be, it would probably, especially F-Zero, I think, if it was a smaller budget and a company with, fewer people and that kind of stuff, that was what they were doing. Nintendo kind of, just helping out along the way a little bit. I think it could be a huge success. And even if it only, look, I'm a collector of physical goods, but even if they were just like, eShop titles. Look like NES Remix, like stuff like that, where it was like when it initially came out, it was just digital, and it was like, hey, Nintendo, do more of this. Like, that's what I was hoping they would do that with Metroid. I was like, hey, put out a side-scrolling Metroid that's 2D side-scrolling, like Super Metroid, that kind of thing, but then put out like just keep sending bounties that you have to keep going on, and heading out. Make it a smaller, lower budget game, so if it doesn't sell that well, they're not losing money. They can still make money on something like this. But
I guess they kind of tried that concept with Federation Force, but that was so far from the Metroid concept that people wanted and were hungry for.
Yeah, exactly.
That it just backfired on them. It also didn't help that they decided to release it, in the time where there had been no Metroid games for how long by then? Years and years. And then after they announced the ones that people wanted, Samus Returns and Prime 4.
Yeah, and there's they have missteps, right? You got like what was that Amiibo Festival where they throw Animal Crossing onto a terrible board game, right? You know what I mean? It just happens. Sometimes the name alone isn't going to be enough. They still have to, people are still gonna they're gonna want quality, right? That's just
as I understand it, even like nowadays, if I remember correctly, Mario and Luigi Bowser's Inside Story plus Bowser Jr.'s Journey, whatever it's called, it had abysmal sales as far as I remember. Like,
it's pretty bad.
Sales in the 5 figures, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, not good.
Sometimes missteps happen. We could just the word internet, and that alone represents one of Nintendo's biggest missteps over the years. And they're still figuring it out in 2019. They're like, oh, what is this internet thing? It's kind of tough to figure out, but we're trying.
Yeah, and it's still, if you know the history and how they were trying to utilize the internet with the NES, and
right,
and you're like,
which is crazy.
They're like, oh, it's never gonna work. Like, no, it will.
One of these days they'll get it right.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see here. This is a fun question. This is fun. I really enjoy this. What is a Nintendo game that you haven't played and or completed that we are going to judge you for?
So this was hard because I was thinking about this one, and I'm not trying to sound arrogant. I really can't think of that many that there would be, but I think the best ones are. I came up with a few, and the first one is Metroid: Samus Returns, and I got to the very end of it, and I got to the final boss. I'm not going to spoil it, and I just never came back to it. I lost a couple of times, and I enjoyed it a lot. I don't have a problem with the game. I just never went back to it, and I think the problem was the Switch happened. And the Switch for me has supplanted the 3DS, despite its fantastic 3D visuals. And it didn't do it for me.
I thought you were talking Game Boy, and I was like the original. No. And so I'm not even joking, you dude. I'm kind of freaking out a little bit because I got to I think I had one Metroid left to kill, but I never owned the Game Boy, and I had to give it back to whoever owned it. And that was it. I could never finish it. And I was like, oh my gosh, he just said literally the same thing.
No, I did finish the original Metroid 2. I barely remember finishing it, but I know I did. Samus Returns, I just never came back to. I don't know if this will be as big a deal, but both Pokemon Sun and Moon and Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, I didn't finish either of those games. I like Pokemon. I just burned out on the battles, and I just never finished them. And I guess maybe the most egregious one that maybe your fans will be like, "What in the world?" is the entire Pikmin series. I'm not a Pikmin fan. I respect the games. I'm not saying they're bad games. They're just not for me.
I got
and
you.
I haven't completed any of them.
So I've only completed Pokemon Yellow.
Okay. Wow. Then I feel like I'm doing pretty well.
You're
here.
doing great. And
Nice.
yeah, I own Pikmin 3. I don't even know if I put it into my Wii U.
Yeah, I barely did. I played it for like a couple of hours. I'm like, yeah, I'm good on this.
Yeah, the most Pikmin I've played would probably be on Nintendo Land. Like
Yeah,
you know what I'm talking about?
I hear you. Probably me too, to be honest. And I just never, I never got into it.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
you know what? I guess I never finished Star Fox Zero, but like, I don't think that's. I'm sure a lot of people understand why that's the case.
I mean, if you stopped halfway through the first stage, we get it. You know.
Yeah, and I feel like I have finished Star Fox Zero because I've finished Star Fox 64. So
Right.
yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, what are your current thoughts on Nintendo and the Switch?
I think Nintendo has absolutely been killing it with the Switch, and I'm so happy to see them, if not technically on top, because PS4 still has more unit sales on top, and it's so great to see them go from bottom of the barrel with the Wii U to really hitting on a concept that has taken off with the Switch. And I was worried originally when they announced it, hearing about they were going with the Tegra 1 chip. I'm like, oh, is this going to be powerful enough? Again, not that I'm a graphics, the graphics are the most important thing, but I'm like, you got to try to have some parity, some sense of parity with other platforms. I was wrong. They hit on the perfect crossroads between price, portability, and power with the Switch. And I continue to be blown away by what the Switch is capable of. I just did a comparison on GameXplain for Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice. It just came out. And, if you put it side by side next to the PS4 version, you can obviously see where compromises had to be made. But it's stunning. Hellblade looks stunning on the Switch. And the fact that you can have a game that looks like that in handheld mode, not to say nothing of games like Smash Brothers Ultimate and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. And I am consistently shocked by what the Switch is capable of. And one of the other things I love about it is that Nintendo has done an incredible job courting indies. And so the Switch has now very quickly become the indie game dream machine. And I love indie games. Yeah. So I'm constantly finding new and cool indie games to play. I just wrapped up playing Blaster Master Zero 2, huge Inti Creates fan. And there's just all sorts of Celeste and Mighty Gunvolt Burst and the upcoming Katana Zero. And there's so much to play on the Switch. It's fantastic.
It's bonkers, man. Every week I do like a what games are coming out, and I'm like, these lists just keep getting bigger and bigger, and like everybody has been saying this month alone, how like our wallets are just like, give us a break.
Well, and now we're getting these really, really key, these really milestone games from other generations. Like we now have 5 Final Fantasy titles on the Switch, or will by the end of April. We're going to have 7, 9, 10, 10-2, and 12. That's amazing to me that we're getting multiple Final Fantasies from multiple console generations. And yet we're getting games like Turok. Like, obviously it's the PC version remastered, but it's still Turok. Like, it's amazing the diversity and just the breadth of games we're getting on the Switch from various console generations. I love it.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Well, hey, we have to wrap this thing up. So where can people find you?
You can find me a couple places, but mainly right now at GameXplain, which you can find at youtube.com/GameXplain. We are a Nintendo-focused YouTube channel. We do cover all platforms, but we have a focus on Nintendo, and I am one of the GameXplain team members, so you can find me there. You can also find me on Twitter and Instagram at my name, which is at Ash Paulsen. That's ASHPAULSEN. And I actually just started a new gig at a company called New Radio Media, so if you ever come across their stuff, you might find me on there and see me doing some cool stuff on there. So that's pretty much where you can find me.
All right. Well, hey, I do really appreciate you taking the time. This was I think we talk on Wednesday, and now we're doing the show. So
no, totally. Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here. I'm happy to come back anytime, especially if you just want to come and talk, nerd out about video game music for an hour. I'd be down for that too. So
yeah,
no, it's been an honor to be here, and thank you to your followers for nominating me to do an interview with you. It's been great.
Yeah, Shell Shock Prime. Thank you so much, man. So,
yes.
All right. Guys, you can follow me on Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, Farmers Only. You know the routine. It's at N64Josh everywhere. You can follow this show at NPowercast. The show notes for this episode be found at n64josh.com/NPC198. If you want to email the show, you got questions, comments, npc@n64josh.com. Guys, I am working on an article for this Tuesday's Talking Point, which is going to be, the main focus is going to be about just the saturation of the game market and how do you guys think we're doing? Like, so that'll be up this weekend. Make sure to get a comment and we'll be able to talk about it on episode 199, and then Thursday is episode 200. I got something special planned, so stay tuned for that. If you guys would like to get yourself a free book from Audible, again, go to audibletrial.com/NPC. The gaming chair I'm sitting in is from OPC. n64josh.com/OPC automatically saves you $10 at checkout. We do want to invite you to the Discord, n64josh.com/Discord. Come hang out, talk video games, find some people to play with. We've been playing a ton of Mario Kart on stream, and I'm actually working on a guide right now. I'm just about to finish it up. So, because I know some of you guys are like, okay, how am I going to get better at this? So I got you. Also, I know GameXplain has some great videos from Mario Kart because I recently watched them. So you can check those out as well. Facebook group, n64josh.com/Facebook group, if that's where you like to hang out on the internet. Lastly, if you could rate and review on iTunes, I would greatly appreciate it. Ash, thank you again, my friend. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you very much for having me, and I would be happy to come back anytime, and congratulations on just about making it to episode 200. That's a huge milestone, so congratulations.
Thanks, man. Thanks. All right, guys, we'll see you later.
Bye.